Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's weekly Tech Talk. The goal of this Tech Talk is to give us a sense of what other business owners are doing in their business and other things that may be interesting for us to be learning about. So we'll talk a little bit about different tools throughout the weeks. Today's topic specifically is on WordPress. So we'll get a little bit of basics on how to get started on WordPress and what it is, that kind of things. And we'll also talk a lot about business tools that we can help each other to tell each other about, so we can understand more about how we are doing certain things and what's working or not working. So basically reducing the time that it takes us to do certain things. So for example, Anil gave us a really good chat about business development and sustainability over time as a business grows, which happened a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in that, it's on my website. Unfortunately, we don't have a recording of that, but I did have some notes on it. And of course, you can always talk to Anil. He's here today. And also last week, we had a chat about introduction to Shopify with Casey. So we'll have more introductions of these kinds of tools over time. And of course, if you have any tools that you want to tell us about, share your experience and expertise, that would be great. We would love it. The point of this weekly Tech Talk is not to do sales, so we don't want to get into like, this is what I do and please buy my product, but it's more about sharing the knowledge. So if you know about something, please tell us about it, and that's kind of what we're here to do. Just so everyone knows, this session is recorded, so we will have it on, it'll go on YouTube, and then it'll be on my website, so everyone can refer to it later and it's there for prosperity. So just so you're aware of that. We do like to keep this as engaging as possible. So if you have questions, you want to come off of mute, chat, put it in the chat. That's all great. We love it. So a little bit of introduction about me. I worked in technology for several years doing sales engineering with a company called New Relic, and that's where I grew a lot of my analytics and business experience. So I'm bringing sort of that into a company that I started this year called Data Up. So this session is sort of part of that, so I can help people with understanding different technologies and sort of learning about different tools. So that's the goal. All right, so let's start it. Let's get started. Let me share my screen here. So we will share this. All right. Can anyone confirm that you can see the WordPress.com site right now?
Yes, Mo.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Mo. So the discussion today is WordPress basics. It's basically for us to, not to get into anything deep, we're not going to do that, but I'm going to introduce you guys to what is WordPress, why should someone care, and what can you do to get started if it is the right fit for you. And we'll talk about the fit in a moment. So why WordPress? It is a fantastic CMS. CMS is content management system. So basically what a content management system is, you can put a lot of information there, let's just say. So that could be images, videos, it could be obviously text and copywriting, things like that. And then you can make it visible, available to the world, so you can sell products if you like. You can sell your services like I do for my business. You can really do a lot of different things. And these days, anyone and everyone wants and has a website. But it's not just having a website, it's how do you make it more appealing and how do you make it more interesting in terms of design, in terms of it being fast, and these kinds of things that we'll talk about throughout these sessions. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about the WordPress, right? So that's what a CMS is. And now why we use a CMS is to make our life easier as a designer, developer, or maybe even as a business owner yourself, depending on what your needs are. So instead of having to go learn a coding language, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with HTML, CSS, PHP, these kinds of things, it's already there for you. And you can basically just install it and get going much faster instead of spending like 3 years to build something. Well, maybe not 3 years, but maybe like 6 months. You can get started in really 10 minutes, but there are a lot of caveats to that. You may not want to do that. So the speed is fantastic, but you need to know a lot of different things around WordPress to be able to do that and make sure you're doing it well. All right, so one of the things I want to point out here is, this is really fantastic. Nearly 37% of the internet, websites really, is built on WordPress. So that's like a mind-boggling kind of statistic, right? Like think about all of the websites in the world, that's all there. But that also creates a lot of issues around things that you may not be aware of. For example, where you have antivirus, hopefully, software on your computer. And the reason it used to be, for example, Macs didn't get a lot of attacks, virus attacks, because there weren't that many people using Macs, right? A long time ago. But as and obviously there were like most of the world was built on PCs, Windows, right? So that's why hackers were building viruses for Windows. So just like that, because WordPress is so much everywhere, there are a lot of hackers that are building things that will cause problems on your website. So this is one of the reasons it might not be a right fit for everyone. So let's get into who is it for. So if you are technical, if you know certain technical, let's say either coding languages, it would be ideal if you know some HTML and CSS. That's sort of the very basics of web design. That'd be great. But outside of that, if you have a lot of time, let's say you have many hours on your hand throughout the months and weeks, then WordPress is great. You can learn a lot. There's so much content on the web, on the internet, and obviously I'll be creating some myself, so you can ask me any questions. It's definitely for designers. Designers is probably the biggest kind of user base from our sort of technical space. Developers for sure, there are a lot of them. And so anyone who knows technology a little bit can get around a little bit, that kind of thing. Who is it not for? This is very, very important. I wanna dissuade some of you guys, if anyone is interested, whether in this call or looking at it later. It may not be for everyone, right? So if you're a business owner and you don't have a lot of time in your hand, it is not for you. It will take you hours and hours and hours, and you'll get frustrated. You won't be sleeping at night. That's not really what you want to do. So as a business owner, stay away from WordPress for the most part. I'll talk about some of the ways you can get started on WordPress and some of the tools that you can use that's similar to WordPress. So if you want a quick website that looks great, it's not for you. So unless you're okay with a template and you just want to put in your text for kind of like as it is, where it is, and you're happy with that, that's great. That's fine. If you are not going to keep up with it on a weekly or monthly basis, it is not for you, because like I said, that security issue before, this is not something that a lot of people won't tell you, unfortunately, especially when they're trying to make money off of you and get business. But it is very important that if you are managing it, not your designer. So for example, if you hire a web developer designer to manage it for you, not a big deal, as long as they're keeping up with it. So you should make sure they're doing that. But as long as if it's you only that's keeping up with it or trying to keep up with it, you need to update it very often. You need to make sure there are no security issues with your themes and all sorts of different things. So it may not be for you. So if you have any questions specifically on is it for you or not, then let me know. So if it is not for you, the question is what is, right? So there are different types of well, let's say levels of WordPress. So right now you're looking at wordpress.com. So wordpress.com is something that's essentially already managed for you. There's the idea of managed. That means that security and other sort of pitfalls that you may run into will be kind of managed for you, as in like you don't have to worry about it. So that's sort of the underlying layer. That's wordpress.com. And you can get started very easily. There's a call to action right here. Get started or start your website. There are a few different versions of this. If I go towards the bottom, it should show me, there you go. So it shows me the different plans. You can actually get started for free by just signing up here, and you can see a website, and it's exactly like WordPress, and you'll see everything normally. If you need a domain to be connected, so by the way, so for the free version, you won't get here we go. So this custom domain. So for example, let's say like I want to say my name is Mo, so I want mo.com, right? So if I have a WordPress site on wordpress.com, I can't get my own domain. So mo.com won't exist. So what will happen is you have to get for the free version, excuse me, for the personal and ongoing versions that you pay $4 or more for each month. That is something you can put your domain in there, and then on top of that, there's other obviously sort of abilities to upgrade, and you can get more things from you for that. So you can check here on WordPress to see what kind of options you have there for if you want to start a WordPress website. If you don't if you feel like let's just say that you started it, you checked out the free version, it's too cumbersome, it's not for you. There are not free, there are other options like Squarespace, excuse me. Squarespace is a great tool that you can have pretty nice designs. It's not as difficult as WordPress can be, but the learning curve is a little bit shorter. So Squarespace is great. If you are interested in something a little more shopping wise, so for example, you want an e-commerce website on your or portion of your website, Shopify is also a good option. Between Squarespace and Shopify, that's usually where I tell my clients to stick around on, because anything outside of it, it kind of gets into this sort of, there's some good options, not so good options. So Wix is, for example, another option. I don't necessarily go to it too much, but Squarespace is my usually go-to for most of these kinds of web building. Okay, so that's if you're not going to do WordPress. So we're going to bring the conversation back to WordPress for a minute. So this is when you want everything sort of managed for you, but you still want a WordPress. This is the safest thing to do if you're trying to do a lot of things yourself. Now, there's sort of an in-between option that I'll mention right now. So there's a managed version for a lot of different hosting providers. So let's just say you have GoDaddy. That's a very common player in the market. So GoDaddy, actually, I can't remember if GoDaddy, pretty sure it does. Yeah, so they should have a managed version, essentially, of WordPress, managed version of WordPress, essentially like what you're getting with WordPress.com, but it's on WordPress's hosting. So if you're asking which one do I recommend, if you're going to go with the managed version, I'm going to say WordPress.com. Okay. And then the third option is the option that most designers, developers, people like me will use, which is called WordPress.org. So WordPress started as what's called an open source software. So basically this is a free software that anyone can develop, anyone can make to help out sort of the community, and then it's available for us for free. So what WordPress.com did was they actually essentially took the WordPress.org, made it into like a paid sort of platform, which is great. So that's WordPress.org. It's usually the most common, as I said, common portion of WordPress that you'll see on the internet. And so I, for example, have a WordPress.org. The difference between this is it's something that I'm managing fully myself, or you're a developer, potentially you are managing yourself. And you got to deal with all the plugins and the security and the themes, all that kind of stuff by yourself. Now so the question is, well, how do I get started if you are interested in that? So then you kind of get to the portion of, there are two ways. There's the really, really difficult way of manually installing WordPress, which I don't recommend for anyone, even like a person like myself, I don't recommend it. But there's a lot of auto installers, which is basically like a program that your web hosting will give you. And then you can just say, okay, I want a WordPress, and it'll install a WordPress for you. You put in your website name and your username and password, and then you can go onto your website and you can get started. All right, so that was a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. If anyone isn't sure if WordPress is still the right choice for you or not, let me know and we can discuss that specifically. So the next portion, for another 5 minutes or so, I'll show you what WordPress actually looks like when you just install it, don't do anything to it. So I set up a demo for you guys so you can see what a basic WordPress website looks like. This is something that's built off of WordPress but has a theme on it. A theme is basically something that you get from somewhere, and I always recommend buying one because you're going to get a better sort of theme, and that's sort of the bare bone of what you need to start a WordPress website. There are a lot of free themes. That's another security issue that you may run into. So again, I recommend a reputable WordPress theme. The one that I love is this one. It's WP Astra. .com. Just see. Yeah. So it's WP as in WordPress, and Astra is the name of the theme provider. So this is sort of like so you have WordPress, and then on top of that you have a theme. I won't go into the technical studies, but you have the theme code. Then on top of that you have the theme design. So the theme code this is sort of the theme code, And then you'll see there are a lot of different designs that they provide you. So for example, in the starter templates, this is usually what I talk through with my clients to kind of start on one of these, and then I go into changing it to the way they want, for example. So these are good. There are some free ones, or there are some sort of basic ones that comes with the cheaper version, and then if you're paying a lot more, then you can get the agency ones. Anyway, so that's getting a little off topic, but this is basically a theme that I put on. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's just a coffee shop. You know, it's got a little shop now button, and you can buy things on it, etc. It's all kind of irrelevant, but the point is, this is a basic WordPress website, and this is what it looks like once you install something like this. So there's a web about, there's a contact page. It's all the basics of a website. Okay. So now that's what's called the front end, which is just what it looks like. That's just a general term. You may hear that. And then then we can go into what's called the back end, which is basically the way that WordPress works, right? It's like all the settings and all the options and features and whatnot. So this is what that looks like. So in my demo here, as you see, I've had it installed for a couple of weeks, and as you see, there's already 9 updates. And if I don't update that, that's a security problem. So let's chat a little bit about the security, right? So security, if you don't do anything to your website, as in like update it and make sure the themes are updated and secure and etc. What may happen is someone decides, okay, I'm going to target you, and then they go to your website and then they do stuff that you really don't want. So they could potentially make your website just completely crash, make you lose all your data, it could be just a whole mess. So that's why security is such a big deal. You don't want to spend a whole 6 months designing your website and then not taking care of it, because then you kind of come into this issues of, okay, well, my website is gone within 2 minutes, right? That's really dangerous. As well as I mentioned, get themes that are reputable from reputable companies, and generally you're paying for it. There are some free ones that are pretty good, but generally with more options, you want the premium ones. Anyway, so the plugins have the same issue. So there are a lot of free plugins. In fact, I use a lot of free plugins myself, but again, make sure they're reputable and make sure that they are they have good reviews and things like that. So as I go into my plugins, you'll see like all these different things that pop up. It's like, okay, so like, do you want to rate me, or do you want to do all these things? We'll ignore it for now. But then this is where all your plugins are. Now, what are plugins? Plugins are basically additional code that you can put into WordPress to make either the design or the functionality of your website to be more interesting. So as an example, I use Astra as my on my normal websites and with my clients, and none of this one is a demo one. Theme, and then on top of that, I use something called Elementor, which basically allows me to build a website much faster instead of hand coding and all that kind of stuff. If I was trying to do like CSS and HTML coding, it would take me, probably a whole day for one thing versus taking me like 2 hours, right? So that's sort of the whole difference of this. So these are called builders. So I recommend to get a page builder, this page builder, for anyone that's kind of getting started and you need some help with it. Beware that does get very sort of intense and technical in some points, at some parts. So just take it easy as you're getting into it. And one of the biggest things I will tell you is always have a backup for your website. Like no matter what changes you're making, like if necessary, every 5 minutes, make a backup, because if you lose something, you could be losing many, many hours of work. Okay, so there are some other plugins. For example, this one can add your Google Analytics code so you can monitor Google Analytics of your users. Then there's WooCommerce if you have any sort of interest in a shopping sort of e-commerce type of website. WooCommerce is great for, it's on WordPress, but it's great for that. And then if you are looking for something where you need to collect information, like you need, for example, like contact information, WP Forms is a pretty common one. All right, so these are what plugins are. But again, if you're downloading one, please make sure that it's reputable, from a reputable company. It has a lot of reviews and it's good. And also keep up with updating your plugins. Okay, the next thing, and we'll cut this off in a couple of minutes because it's I don't want to get into it too much. So the next thing is posts and pages. So these are very similar actually. So posts are essentially anything that you want to put on your blog. So let's say I'm gonna, once I have this done, I'll say like, okay, so this is a post for me, this basics of WordPress, and then I'm gonna put it on my website and say this is a post. And so in the post, I'll say, okay, this is what we talked about, this is the video, et cetera, et cetera. It looks very similar to a page, but the post, the idea of a post is it's on your blog section, and it kind of goes into this sort of order form. It's like, these are your posts about, here you see for like street food, these are your posts about spring, these are your posts about dinner, et cetera. So usually it follows some sort of a category and you're posting regularly, versus pages you generally create less often. So for example, you may say, I have my about page. You're not going to change that every 2 months, right? Or every month or something. So you may update something, but you're not going to change it drastically. So that's where things like the pages come in. So you have static, it's called static, so you're not changing too much. So that's where the static sort of things come in. Which is just like the regular things you hear about. So the cart, the about page, the checkout and contact, whatever like that. Those are all pages. So that's the difference between pages and posts. Media is anytime you will use it anytime you want to put on any images or videos. Not to get into any more, but images and videos are the basic ones. But so that basically helps you get started on adding some images, and then you can add them into your posts and pages. And then comments, anytime anyone comments on your posts or pages, that's when you can get some comments from there. All right, so there are a lot of other things, as you can see. So I'm going to leave this this next section for another call, probably next week, and we'll talk about the settings, how you what some of those means, and how you can change some of those. And then the appearance. This is sort of where it gets a little more advanced, and you can change the themes, and you can add sort of customizations and things like that. So we'll get into talking about that and how to add a specific page next time on a next call. So I'll stop this right now. All right, so does anyone have any questions?
Hey Mo,
Yeah, Neil.
so what's the difference between these two themes, the Astra, the one that you showed, and Divi? I mean, which one is better?
They're very common. You kind of hear about both of them in the space. DV, I don't know which one's been around longer actually, but I prefer Astra because it has a very low file size, which means that it can load faster, and also it gives you a little more options on what it is that you're doing. If you have DV, I don't think you need to change it unless you're running into issues. But it's usually like you'll talk to certain developers or designers, and they'll have their choice of this tool, and so I choose Astra. That's what I like the most, and that's kind of what I go with.
Okay. So the another question that I had is it very complicated to change the themes? Let's say, for example, if I have to
Yeah.
change from a Divi to Astra,
Yeah.
is that a very complicated process?
It's a complicated question. The answer is probably yes. So the thing is, when you're changing a theme, so without getting too much into it, the code layer of the theme, like for example, Astra or DV, it basically gives you the basics of what you're doing on your website, or sorry, what the front end looks like. And then you add a theme to it, that's when it kind of like takes shape and looks in a certain way. So without getting too complicated, what will
So the
happen?
question that I want to ask is,
Yeah.
so if I change, let's say, from a Divi to Astra,
Mhm.
will the entire layout change?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. So basically,
Okay.
if you change it,
Okay.
it will just get all messed up.
Okay, got it.
But there are sort of happy mediums in between. So you can, for example, change to Astra, right? Like the Astra theme layer. Then you can add a theme to it, and then based on the content that you already have, because you already have it, it won't be as much work, but it'll still be a decent amount of work. Yeah. So to answer your question, it's going to be difficult to do
Okay.
that.
Thanks.
So what I would do if you're curious about it is, do you have a staging version of your website?
I mean, what do you mean by the staging version? I mean, it's a duplicate version of.
Yeah, so basically a staging version is where you can make changes to your website without affecting the main one. That way, let's say you make a mistake, it's not going to break your entire site, and because you have a copy, you can replace it. So I know you're on SiteGround, and SiteGround does have a staging option. So if you don't already
Okay.
have that, you can enable it.
Oh, okay.
So to answer, sorry, to kind of go on a little more, what you can do is you can put on a Astra theme and the Astra layer,
Uh-huh.
and there's a free version. I think there's a free version, but there's one that you can download or pay for. But then if you don't like it or whatever, you can get your money back in 2 weeks or something.
Okay.
Anyway, so you can install it on your website and see the performance, how long it takes on the DV and the Astra. It's very similar. So like I said, probably wouldn't change it unless you don't like DV, but it does allow you to kind of change it without like losing all the content and everything. You'll have to move some things around in the end afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks, Mo.
So you're welcome. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question.
Hey, Joanna.
What's the best way to do the backup? How do you save it?
Good question. That's actually a really, really good question. It depends on the hosting provider that you have. So I use something called WP Engine, which is sort of like a very premium sort of hosting provider, and they provide a lot of these things for you. So it's that's it's like you kind of like get what you pay for, I suppose. But the option that I recommend for most of my clients, and I also use SiteGround as well, like Anil does. So SiteGround is sort of the middle ground, and you're paying usually about $20 or $30 a month for like a decent website. That's great for you. So and they also have some options that you can get started quick with a cheaper version. Anyway, so with SiteGround, you have the option to back it up. They will actually back it up regularly for you. So there's an option that every day or every night, really, it usually happens in the midnight to 5 a.m. kind of period for us. So like, let's say at 4 a.m. every night, it gets backed up. So they usually keep it for about 2 to 4 weeks. So for example, every day you have a backup of something that happened. And the reason it's important to do it every day is because let's say that you have a website where people are commenting every day, right? Like, and they're doing things on it, whatever. So they're content that are generating every single day. So the idea is that if you have more comments and stuff like that today, you don't want to lose that tomorrow. So if you have the backup, let's say you lose it, something happens at 6 a.m. or 10 a.m., you've only lost a little bit versus you losing 2 weeks of data, right? So that's the idea. So there's the one that the hosting providers will do for you, or there's the option of installing a plugin, and within the plugin you can install or back up certain parts of your website or the whole website altogether. Yeah.
I used to have a WordPress page for my portfolio, and I had all these images and all this stuff, and it was myname.com.br. And once I stopped paying for the domain, everything just disappeared.
Yeah, so that'll happen. So did you keep it back up?
No, I mean, I saved it on WordPress, but once I was thinking if there was a way to save it into my computer so that I could maybe use it again in a different domain or something like that.
So did you already lose it, or you still have access to it?
It's gone.
Okay. Okay.
It is gone.
Okay. So let's say that you're starting again and your hosting provider doesn't have that backup option every day. Then there's something that
I wanted to change hosting providers. Then do I have to lose it, or is there a way to transfer it? That's what I'm thinking.
There are ways to transfer it. Yeah, that's a good question as well. So without getting into it too much, and also we're running over time, but you can transfer your existing WordPress website into another place. There are premium sort of plugins that let you do that, and then there are hosting specific plugins that let you do that. So let's say we talked about SiteGround before. So let's say you're hosting us on, or your WordPress is on, GoDaddy or something, and then you want to put it on SiteGround. SiteGround actually has this tool, which is a plugin you install, and then it essentially just does the work for you. And then at the end, you should have more or less the same copy on the other side. There are some caveats though. When you transfer things like that, there are issues that may arise with the database and things like that. So when you're doing it, make sure you, again, have a copy, backup copy. Well, you'll have the original one, but just don't do anything before you make sure everything's done on the new one. So if it doesn't work, then chat with the hosting provider. Usually they have people that can help you kind of move it if there are problems in that transfer process. Okay. Besides that, I put in the chat, I put a plugin that's called Updraft WordPress Backup Plugin.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I like if I need to like do manual backups and keep a copy of my website or something, because that allows me to not only back up the database, it also allows me to back up the theme and other files that are sort of important.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Does anyone have? Does anyone else have any other questions? Michael, you're all good?
Yeah, actually, it's very, very well done. I have built a few websites, and a lot of what you talked about, that's kind of the way I have my setup right now.
Mm-hmm.
I back up using Updraft as well. I use Thrive Themes, Theme Builder, and Architect to design my sites. I prefer not to have to do the technical work anymore, but I'm still doing it myself.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. All right. Asif, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining on a Friday. I really appreciate it. Have a great. Michael, can you put your email in the chat? I'll send you an email with the link of this that when we put it up. So yeah, so I will see you guys hopefully next week. If you have any questions until then, or if you have any topics that you are interested in talking about, or tools that you're interested in learning about or discussing, let me know. Shoot me a quick email, and I'd love to chat about it. Well, thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mo.
Bye.
See you later.